So, I know it's not what we're here to talk about, but I watched that The Gorge on Friday when it came out. I guess it was kind of almost like it's supposed to be like a Valentine's Day thing because it has like a romantic angle to it. But it was very, very good, very entertaining. I liked the first half of it better than the second half, even though the second half was more like a full-on action, sci-fi, horror. Because the first half, I think, felt more like a theatrical release movie. And overall, and above all, that's one of the things, I mean, this definitely was like a very good direct-to-streaming film. And Anya Taylor-Joy and Miles Teller were great. They have good chemistry together, and it was definitely a nice, twisty concept, and, you know, not surprised at all that Scott Derrickson did it. I guess he wrote, directed, and produced it.
Wow. Yeah, I like Scott Derrickson. I was looking forward to that. I still have to watch it because I don't have easy access to Apple Plus, but I'm gonna try to get that. It definitely seemed like something that might have done fairly well in the theater.
Yeah, you can see where, I mean, there's a few like standard thriller beats that crop up here and there, but overall it was entertaining. I mean, I can see in some areas where it might have been not quite, you know, up to being a theatrical release, but overall I thought it was very good. I'd definitely watch it again. So that's...
Yeah, I'll check that one out.
What I've been got going. I told you, you know, Jen and I failed to see, I won't get into that, but Jen and I failed to see Hard Eyes yesterday. We'll try that again.
Yeah, that was very good. Definitely want to get to that so we can talk about it. I think that's worth an episode.
Totally. But we are here today to talk about the latest MCU entry, Captain America, Brave New World.
Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum. And this was, you know, this has been the first, when was the last, was Deadpool the last Marvel movie, right?
Yeah, no, really. I can't even remember.
So it's been a while, but like, as we've said, I think we're both happy that they're back to a much more lean release schedule, because I think it makes for more anticipation. Same thing with the shows. They've dialed those back as well, though. Although I can't wait for Daredevil.
Oh, yeah, that looks great.
But yeah, so I saw the trailer for this. I purposely stopped paying attention after the second trailer or the main trailer came out about a month ago, because I'm like, okay, I want to go into this as cold as possible. That's been my latest thing with Marvel movies, is I want to go in as cold as possible. So if it's underwhelming, I at least want to be surprised by the plot and everything else. And
right, I'll
start this time. I mean, like, initial reaction, I was very surprised. And as I'm watching this movie, I'm like, wow, this is good. This is like, I'm not, you know, I'm surprised by what's happening. I'm surprised by the turns of events. I'm surprised by who's showing up and what's happening in the storyline. I mean, it probably took some cues from Winter Soldier, but it wasn't even the straight up spy thriller I thought it was going to be. It was like, you know, it had this very Marvel, you know, cast of characters with Samuel Stearns. Yep. Yeah. And does he have like does he have a handle, like a supervillain handle? Like the Brain?
Oh, yeah,
or
the leader. Like, yeah, he's a classic Hulk villain.
Okay. So that's his name, the leader.
Which, yeah, they didn't really call him that throughout the movie. I was kind of hoping that he'd get a name drop, but...
Just the people who showed up in this film, I was surprised. Obviously, it takes big cues from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It kind of picks up a little bit from where that left off. Obviously, it's got the big elephant in the room cue from Eternals, you know, and that was
right.
That was sort of the big running joke, as they finally addressed this big thing sticking out of the planet.
Yep.
That they haven't addressed up to now. So I'll stop there. But just overall, I was pleasantly surprised. It wasn't predictable. I thought it was it's a solid, like, you know, mid-tier action adventure MCU installment, like a la, although not with the comedy elements, a la Ant-Man or Doctor Strange or Captain Marvel, or, you know, one of those sort of like right in the middle. I was entertained. It wasn't predictable. I was surprised at different points along the way. It was not a mind blower, but I thought it was really good. So that's my initial reaction. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on the same boat. I ended up really enjoying it, although it didn't like blow me away in any particular department. Although I did kind of go into it in the opposite kind of mindset as you. I was kind of like, I wasn't really looking forward to it, and I was kind of looking for every little spoiler detail I could find to try to see if there was anything that might be interesting in it. And I was definitely, I knew pretty much the entire plot going into it, so I was kind of like skeptical. I thought, well, it could be either a really fun comic book adventure. There was a lot more kind of science fiction, fantasy, comic book elements to this than maybe some of the previous Captain America movies.
Right.
So I said I thought it could go in two different ways. It could either work very well and be fun comic book style adventure, or it could be just like a total mess. And along with all the kind of behind the scenes reshoot drama that there was for this movie, there were a lot of people thinking it wasn't going to be very good, wasn't going to do very well. But yeah, no, I went into it kind of knowing exactly what was going to happen, but I still left very like, well, there were still some scenes that, even though I knew what was going to happen, it was kind of tense. It never reached the level of like intensity as like Winter Soldier, even though I do think it was trying to take a lot from Winter Soldier. And just overall, it was just a lot of fun, good action for the most part. I do think it was a little bit kind of, you could see some of the reshoots, especially I thought some of the action scenes, like there were some action scenes that felt very almost like kind of basic, especially compared to like Winter Soldier. The action in that is so great that here it felt a little bit more basic, but then there were certain action scenes that I thought felt like they were a little bit more well done, a little bit more intense. So there was kind of like a back and forth where I could kind of see where some of the reshoots were.
Okay.
But overall, no, I thought it was solid. There was some pretty dodgy CGI in some certain scenes, especially towards the end. But overall, I didn't think it brought the movie down too much. So yeah, no, I left very, very happy and kind of excited to see where it went, to the point where I probably will go in as blind as possible to the next one, just so I can, because I would have liked to have been surprised by some of the elements, returning characters and that sort of thing. But overall, I think they, for all the different like elements they were bringing in from all these different MCU movies, and there was a lot of kind of like filling in exposition, especially towards the beginning, a lot of like news sequences that kind of brought everybody up to speed if you hadn't seen all the other stuff. But I thought it, for what it was, it worked very well, and I was impressed with how they managed to tie everything in together and still keep it fairly, accessible for new audiences or people that aren't like super MCU diehards like we are.
Right. And I'll just put a spoiler alert out there now, because I just know we'll get into, now that we've gotten past the initial reactions, I know we'll get into spoilers, so just throwing that out there. Spoiler alert. Yeah, it was interesting. Obvious, like, it suffers, if it suffers from anything, I don't know, maybe suffer's not the right word, but there is, with every Marvel movie now, you have to have, it like relies so much on the building blocks of previous movies. Like, you really, like I said, like you said, they made it accessible enough, but really, it comes out, coming out of the events of Winter Soldier, like you'd have no idea who Danny Ramirez is if you hadn't watched that show, and if you hadn't seen Eternals, you'd have no idea what the Celestial is. So things like that were interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the CGI. I felt like as I was watching it, like I said, I mean, I don't have as keen an eye for that as you do anyway, but like there were definitely some moments where I thought, like, especially with like the Red Hulk, I'm like, I bet this is not holding up to snuff. But it didn't. There was nothing that jumped out at me that was like so bad that, like you said, that it ruined the film.
Yeah, I think like based on the trailers, I was kind of skeptical about the CGI because I didn't think they were that great in the trailers. It definitely improved. I think they improved it for the final movie itself, but there were, especially towards the end, some green screen shots that were pretty rough, and there were certain scenes like where Hulk was throwing things where it almost just looked like they had just pasted an image of something and like moved it across the screen to get to Sam Wilson. Like, it didn't quite look. There were certain, and they were super quick, so it's not like super noticeable, but there were certain scenes that the CGI just didn't quite blend with the environment. But overall, I thought it was more solid than I was expecting, and it didn't. There were only a few handful of shots here and there that were really weak. But yeah, I thought the production overall was okay. I didn't think there was anything that stood out to me as exceptionally good. But
right.
It wasn't like totally a total mess in terms of technicality or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the director, Julius Ona. I don't know anything else that he's done.
I don't think I've seen anything that he's done. I don't think he's done anything super well received, unfortunately.
Yeah, but like, I mean, the direction was fine. Like I said, the story elements were just, again, like just the callbacks to the original Hulk because of Ross, and dealing with, obviously now this is how adamantium is getting introduced into the MCU, and setting up X-Men stuff is by saying that, you know, that this Celestial is the source of it. So I thought that was cool. So clearly they're setting up the X-Men, and then jumping ahead to the post-credit scene, which was kind of a throwaway. And to me, the post-credit scene was just a totally, I bet that was done like very recently, and just, it's totally just to set up the multiverse, the Fantastic Four multiverse stuff, and obviously the Secret Wars event, and then, you know, the next Avengers movies are going to be very multiversal.
Yeah, the first thing that my friend said to me when after the post-credit scene had ended, he turned to me and it was just like, what is he talking about? He could mean like 100 different things. I think they made it like super vague on purpose, just because like anything could, as we've seen the past like 5 or so years, anything could change. So they just said, just make a vague statement to like other worlds or other like aliens, and you know, it'll tie in one way or the other. I think I was kind of skeptical going in. I wasn't sure how well they would tie in. Like after reading just kind of a bare bones like leaked summary of the plot, I was like, how, like they're bringing in the leader, Samuel Stearns. They're bringing in like Red Hulk and into a Captain America movie. I was kind of skeptical that they would be able to tie it all in together, but no, I actually thought the leader was a great villain, and I think a lot of my kind of skepticism came from it was very, and this isn't necessarily a criticism of the movie, but it was very hard for me to remember that Harrison Ford was playing Thunderbolt Ross, William Hurt's character.
Right, not a totally new character.
Not a totally different character. Right. And so that almost, I was like, where is the connection from? But then after watching the movie and having it like kind of spelled out, for lack of a better, I remembered, oh yeah, no, he's supposed to be the Ross character from Incredible Hulk. So it would make sense that Ross may have like found out about Samuel Stearns one way or the other. And then just how they explained how he kind of utilized Samuel's mutation, and how they kind of worked with each other, but eventually Ross betrayed him. I thought that was all very well done, and more of an interesting mystery than I had kind of anticipated, and it all worked and flowed together. The motivations just kind of made a lot more sense than I was expecting, so that I think worked for me. And I thought Tim Blake Nelson, I thought he was great. His performance was very creepy and menacing, and the makeup was cool. There was a little bit of a, seems like a switch up with his design at the last minute, but overall I thought he was a great villain.
Yeah, no, I thought he was good, and there was a bunch of sort of not conflicting but sort of plot elements that came together, because there was the whole Isaiah Bradley angle, and like, that was like a motivation for Sam, and then, you know, this the whole Ross thing, has he turned over a new leaf or hasn't he? You know, you think the Sidewinder character, Giancarlo Esposito, I thought he was very good too. He was kind of, you know, it's almost like seemed like he was going to be the chief supervillain, but it turned out he was more, not a red herring, but he was just more of like a, you know, a side character,
like a pawn almost.
Right. But I thought his fight, their very unpowered fight scene when he,
that was probably one of my favorite scenes.
That was very good. And I thought Shira Haas, I don't know her from a hole in the wall, I haven't seen her in anything else. I thought she was good in terms of coming off as like, you thought she was gonna sort of be this like insidious, like nefarious character, and then she turns out to be an ally and a widow, former widow, and all that stuff. So I thought that was cool too. To me, the best visual scene, I thought the whole naval battle and Sam and Danny trying to shut down the rogue fighters are all around the Celestial. I thought that to me was probably the most visually impressive. I thought that was a good set piece.
Yeah, I like that scene. It was a lot of cool. It was very intense. That to me kind of hit that same level of intensity as Winter Soldier. I don't think it quite reached that in any other scene, but that was the scene where I was like on the edge of my seat. I just remember I keep going back to Winter Soldier just because obviously, well, it's a Cap sequel and they're trying to kind of take that some of those political spy thriller elements from that movie. But I just remember being so blown away by Winter Soldier, kind of going into it not expecting much, and then being like on the edge of my seat, and all these twists that ended up like Hydra and Bucky and everything that ended up having a huge impact on the MCU. I thought I wasn't sure if that they were going to try to do that with this one, although to me, I did see a lot of parallels to the plot of Winter Soldier from just especially in the beginning, like the hero and his partner go on kind of some like in medias res mission that they end up succeeding at, but it ends up being a setup for some greater conspiracy. They have to go on the run. They end up finding a mysterious underground military bunker in the middle of West Virginia where the villain has been plotting and pulling all the strings. But then after that reveal of the leader, that's when it kind of takes its own path and goes off in a whole bunch of different directions, which I thought ended up working very well.
That's funny. Well, that's, I guess, a credit to the movie, because like you're so right. That's those story beats are all like exactly the same, but I didn't even notice until
that's funny.
Until you just said it. But like you said too, they took it in such a different direction. I do want to call out to Carl Lumbly as Isaiah Bradley. I thought pure acting, I thought he had one of the best.
He was probably
he was really,
one of the
really
best
good.
Performances. But that said, I thought, there's a lot of talk. I don't know if you've seen this, but one of the big refrains that everyone says when talking about Anthony Mackie is like, oh, he's a good actor, but, he's not a leading man. He can't really hold the main part as one of the main Avengers. But I thought he was really good. And Harrison Ford, for, as big, like a reputation he has for being grumpy and not caring about these genre films and stuff, I thought he did a great job too.
Yeah, no, he did. He showed, the whole subplot of him and Betty Ross. Yeah, I mean, they brought so much back from the '08 Hulk, and then it was so funny. You waited the whole film. I'm like, oh man, are they really going to do it? Are they really going to do it? And then he has the phone call with Betty when she calls him in the Oval Office, and of course I'm listening. I'm like, yep, that's Liv Tyler's voice. So, and I thought, okay, that's all we're going to get. It's like it's really her voice, not just some stand-in. And but then when she showed up at the end, I thought that was a great moment. And so
that helped kind of connect that character back to William Hurt's portrayal.
Mm-hmm. And I think, there was just enough of those. Like, I didn't expect the leader. I didn't expect Liv Tyler. I didn't expect the Shira Haas character to be this like Black Widow person, and Isaiah Bradley. And then the only cameo that you wonder about, and that made me think of like reshoots or something like that, is when Bucky shows up for like
Bucky?
5 minutes.
Yeah, he doesn't really have an action scene or anything. It's just...
it was fine, and like it's understandable that he would show up because what's his name was in the hospital. But that again, that calls back to Winter Soldier, like when they're all hanging out when Nick is getting operated on.
Well, yeah, and to kind of go back to that Winter Soldier connection too, it seemed like they were trying to do like the big reveal of Hydra in Winter Soldier was kind of the big reveal of the leader,
right? And
obviously even to the point of like Bucky being a twist for mainstream audiences, because they didn't know that he becomes Winter Soldier, but like comic book fans do. If it wasn't for Red Hulk being so heavy in the trailers and marketing, that almost was like a twist, the Bucky twist, where people wouldn't expect Ross to be Red Hulk, but if you're familiar with the comics, you would know that that's what they're kind of leading up to. It really seemed like they were trying to kind of do as many one-to-one like plot structure parallels to Winter Soldier, almost because like I almost wonder if they were too scared to go, and like they were like, all right, what's our best movie, and we should just take that kind of plot structure and just apply it to something else, and they didn't want to take too many risks, kind of thing.
Yeah, I wonder who wrote this.
The writers of the Falcon Winter Soldier TV show.
Oh, was it? Okay. Yeah, it definitely wasn't Mark.
And maybe the director. It because of all the behind the scenes drama, I think there were a lot of hands in the pot, which is actually kind of surprising that it came out as well as it did.
Rob Edwards, Malcolm Spellman, Talon Musan. I don't know. I never heard of any of them. but maybe they are.
Yeah, I think those.
They're from.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Don Musan and not Rob Edwards, the other one are the two guys that did Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Okay. What are they setting up with this film? Because clearly there's that point where Ross asks Sam to restart the Avengers. And to me, is that like a cue to Thunderbolts? Like Sam doesn't restart the Avengers, or he doesn't do it the way that Ross wants him to do it, so Ross, comes up with the Thunderbolts. I mean, I was wondering if that was sort of set. Like, so is Harrison Ford in Thunderbolts?
Not as far as I know.
I haven't seen him.
And that's the other thing is, it's funny. I've always thought, and I'm not super familiar with Thunderbolts in the comics, I always thought that Ross was connected to Thunderbolts.
I thought that was
way because of the name.
I thought that was his team, but I guess maybe not.
As far as I know, as far as I know, it's actually not, which is kind of surprised me when I learned that, because you'd think that there would be some connection. I always thought there was, but I guess not. But I am curious. This almost seemed more like a movie that they were trying to like close up a bunch of stuff, like hanging plot threads, like obviously Incredible Hulk, Eternals, stuff that like you'd think would have come back by now, but it hasn't. But in terms of where the movie actually ends, there isn't a lot of like cliffhanger aside from the kind of vague threat of the leader at the end.
No, and I wonder if that's a new strategy by Marvel, is to not so intentionally set up anything in any one particular, but I suppose in more, this definitely is not like this wasn't a tentpole MCU film the way that like Fantastic Four is probably going to be, and neither is Thunderbolts. So maybe they're going to avoid doing it except for those big films. But
let's hope. Because I like the setup, but you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly. And then just to circle back on the Sebastian Stan cameo. So I wonder, what's the whole thing with him running for Congress? I was like, is that something?
That seems kind of out of left field based on what we know about Thunderbolt so far, but I guess it might play into that.
It's kind of funny and interesting, and kind of out of nowhere. Like, so I wondered if that was like, maybe there was more to his cameo in before some reshoots and editing happened or something like that. I don't know. I don't think not that I think he would have had any superhero moments in the movie, but I wonder if like whatever, or I think he was just more of a kind of, this is a continuation of Falcon and Winter Soldier, so it's kind of like it was like his obligatory appearance. And then it's funny, they actually never named her, but there's an actress called, and I'm gonna butcher her name, Zosha Rocamore, who was a Secret Service agent. She was kind of the aide to the president. And like clearly there was some familiarity between her and Sam, but like they never even gave her a name, or at least not that maybe it's just not sure.
Was she not a returning character? I thought she was.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm like Sam's sister, or like whatever. Yeah, one of his family members from Falcon and Winter Soldier. I'm trying to look at, because I think
she was. Because that name sounds familiar.
Okay, it says Layla Taylor. I don't remember hearing her. Secret Service agent working for Ross, who has a history with Wilson, romantic interest for Wilson in the comics, but there's no mention of it in the movie. That's interesting. But she was cool. I thought she was a good character, but she's gonna almost like fall victim to like Agent 13. Like, you'll never hear from her again. Anyway, any final thoughts on Brave New World?
Oh no, I guess the title is a little bit too epic for it. It almost implies that there was going to be some big status quo shift, like Winter Soldier.
Right.
But
there was not.
Really, it's just kind of a throwaway line. Someone says like, it's the brave new world of adamantium. So
right.
I guess it's mostly setting up adamantium and Wolverine and X-Men, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just it's just the new. This adamantium is going to, I guess, become some kind of big factor, but down the road, this was clearly just setting it up. But yeah, I do.
It is funny, and this is kind of just a Real quick aside, it's funny, he said that it was more destructible than more indestructible than vibranium, and I was like, how can something be, if something's indestructible, how can it be more indestructible? Like,
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's just even more whatever than vibranium. I did also like that this came in under 2-hour runtime.
Yeah, that was surprising too. I think that was probably a very intentional choice on their part, especially after the Marvels also being under 2 hours, and since this wasn't a big multiverse celebration movie like Deadpool was,
right.
Yeah, that was nice. Although I wouldn't have hated a little bit more, especially wouldn't have hated more the leader, wouldn't have hated more Ruth, that Israeli character.
Oh
there.
yeah.
But I think it worked pretty well.
So overall, yeah, well, it's funny. So surprisingly, 88 million for opening weekend puts it.
Oh yeah, no, it seems like people are showing up for it.
But like I'm looking at but I'm surprised it's getting, like I said I wasn't going to look at the Rotten Tomatoes or any of the reviews until after we finished, and we're just about done. But a lot of people seem to be kind of, at least, I don't know, what's the audience score? I can't see that, but.
The audience score is
80,
a lot higher than the so I think this is going to be one where it kind of breaks through the bad critic score and has good word of mouth.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know what the critics were expecting. Like I said, overall,
I think they're just harder on Marvel movies in general, well, and the audiences too, but critics especially.
But yeah, overall, I thought it was like, not spectacular, not mind blowing. It's not up there with any of the classics of the MCU, but it was a just very good, very solid adventure.
Yep, yeah, I think I'd have to 100% agree with that.
So next up, we're going to try to get to Hard Eyes.
I know, yeah.
And I know there's some other horror stuff coming up that looks good. Another shout out.
Yeah, Monkey comes out next week.
That one I'm like
looking forward to that.
That looks good. The cast looks great. It seems like a lot of people popping up in that, but I'm just worried that the gore factor might exceed my comfort level.
Yeah, it does look like it's going to be pretty gory.
So we'll have to see. But I want to see it. We've got Daredevil, and then the Thunderbolts, and then Fantastic Four. And I think...
I know, Fantastic Four looks great.
Yeah, it does. I thought that teaser was really good. I like the way that I love doing the retro Jack Kirby 1960s, and somehow, we'll see how it goes from there. But that looks really good. We'll have to tackle probably Daredevil. They did ultimately cut it down to like 8 or 10 episodes, right? I think.
Yeah, I think originally it was going to be like some ridiculous amount of episodes, like 30 episodes or something, which I don't know where they got that number or why, but it seems like they've tried to do their best to bring it way back towards like the original Netflix show.
It's so funny how they did that, how that spin happened, that like originally they were like, no, we're throwing out everything from the Netflix show, we're going to start over. It's just him playing the character, but and obviously Vincent D'Onofrio, but everything else is going to be new. And then now, like, even I saw like a casting thing about who's going to play Elektra, and I think they were going in another direction, and now they're going to just bring back Elodie Young, who played her in the Netflix show. And I'm like, I personally agree with that. I think that's if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Oh yeah, well, if they're going to follow up the Netflix show, then they try to connect it, then they should. I still feel like those Netflix shows are in kind of a weird limbo in terms of if they're canon or not, but seems like this will go pretty far in connecting them.
And I wonder when...
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it looks good.
I wonder how much of... I'd love to see Luke Cage show up. Iron Fist, I can take or leave. If it's Iron Fist, and I can't remember the actress's name, who kind of took over. She was awesome.
Colleen Wing.
Colleen Wing, yeah. She totally should have been Iron Fist instead of him. So if they bring her back, that'll be good. But I think Kristen Ritter has already filmed some scenes, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really? Oh, I think I do remember hearing that too. Who knows if it's true, but...
Right, or maybe, I think she maybe has like a cameo, because obviously John Bernthal's, he's very prominently in this. But I think the only other hero is like I said, I thought Kristen Ritter had filmed some scenes. My guess is she might have like a little cameo in the first season, and then maybe she'll have a bigger role going forward. But I'm excited about that. So some cool stuff coming up. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. Please give us likes and clicks and comments wherever you're finding us and listening to us. We appreciate that as well, and we will be back soon. I think we're on, so far in 2025, we're on a pretty good clip of getting episodes out a little bit more frequently, so we will definitely endeavor to keep that up. But thanks very much, and I think that's a wrap.
Sounds good. Yep. See you on the next one, guys.